Salutations, my fellow Grey Wardens. It is Matty here today, and depending on where you stand on how the future of Dragon Age should go, you either had a pretty terrible weekend or a pretty great weekend, because we just saw a number of Dragon Age Dreadwolf leaks. Now, keep in mind that a lot of these leaks are gameplay, screenshots from playtesting, aka things I cannot put in the video, so if you are looking for them, you have to look elsewhere. But we are going to talk about that, plus Insider Gaming's report, as well as where I stand on all these leaks. Now, for the too long didn't read, Matty's feeling a little bit worried. I'm a big believer in BioWare. Like, I feel like they got to swing for the fences here with Dreadwolf, but I'm trying not to be too judgmental because what we're seeing is very early. But if what we're reading is an indication of what we're going to get, I do have some mild concerns that I just want to vent to all of you today. So thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you. Welcome one, welcome all. If you're new here, you're into BioWare content, you're in the right places. I always say there could be something written on a napkin in a diner and your boy will pick it up and make a video about it. So we're always talking about BioWare when we get a chance to. Consider subscribing. Let's begin with Insider Gaming's report, because obviously there is a timeline to all of this, and it started with this Insider Gaming report, which then beckoned the gameplay leak. So let's begin there, where it says Insider Gaming sources who have spoken to Insider Gaming under the request of anonymity have said that Dragon Age Dreadwolf might be further away than previous rumors have suggested. The development of Dreadwolf began in 2015 and has seen significant changes over its 8-year development, but EA is still yet to issue a release date for the title. Previous rumors have suggested the game could release in 2023, but the information provided to Insider Gaming suggests that the date could be rather optimistic. Okay, well, this is pain point number one. I was really pulling for a little bit of Dragon Age Dreadwolf in the fall. I was hoping that would be the case here because originally what was reported is, hey, that would be a good place for it to release because it's not ready when people were calling for it in 2022 with some type of reveal. You remember the energy I gave them. BioWare, you need to hit a home run. Do not rush this out the door. But now to know that it won't meet this timeline, I can't help but see that 8-year development stretch and get a smidge of Anthem vibes, right? The timeline certainly speaks for itself. That's where I'm getting all of that from. And at a certain point, again, you can't blame EA for saying, hey, we kind of invested a lot of money into this. We got to see something out of it. So for it to pivot to single player was obviously a great sign of things to come. Clearly that changes where the game is going, what it would become. And that does require a soft reset on development. So it's not like all 8 years they were working on the same exact thing, but it's all been in the same world, the same realm. And to see that we're probably not going to get it this year, again, I will be patient and wait for BioWare to deliver, but it stings a little bit knowing like we're still somewhat of a ways out. Sources who have knowledge of the game and its progress have said that the game still lacks features, completed character lines, and still contains the remnants of the game's past, which abruptly changed directions in early 2021. According to Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, Dragon Age Dreadwolf pivoted from its planned multiplayer components to a single-player experience. Continuing on, they say two sources have revealed that some of those multiplayer components are still sensed to some degree in the current build of the game, with one source saying that the game felt a bit like Destiny with a central hub where players could probably regroup before heading into the next mission. The game's hub, though, will still play a vital role in Dreadwolf in its single-player format. Dreadwolf follows a similar gameplay loop to its predecessors, which will involve recruiting and growing your own crew, whom you'll encounter by completing missions. Your recruited crew will populate your hub, where you can then give them different pieces of equipment and modifications as you progress throughout the game. It's understood that you'll be able to move from your hub to missions by passing through a mirrored portal. This would make sense given Dreadwolf continues from where Trespasser is. If you play Trespasser, you may recognize those portals a bit, but this is the part that doesn't sound that bad to me. I know some people saw a Destiny style hub and like shivered a little bit, but to me, outside of probably Dragon Age 2 of all games, there's always been a distinct hub area where the party gathers before you go out on your next mission. In Inquisition, you're in your own fortress all of your party members are littered about as you go to shops, you do your loyalty missions, you go to the war table, and eventually head out on your next mission. In Dragon Age Origins, it was going to your camp where your party gathered, albeit much smaller. It's where you did your enchantments, and that was really it. Otherwise, you were doing, again, loyalty missions. That's always been a part of Dragon Age to me. The hub area where everyone gathers as you slowly gain a party. I don't think that sounds actually all that bad. Now, when we're supposed to be coming out in 2023, as was reported, and we're lacking features, we're lacking completed character lines, and so on, this brings back a video that Mark Dara, who was with BioWare for about 2 decades, had made about the BioWare hockey stick style development, where they're on this slow, slightly slanted line going somewhat upwards, and then like a hockey stick, you curve up and things start to come together very quickly at the end. That leaves minimal time for game testing, and that's not necessarily encouraging when BioWare, who I think were once some of the strongest storytellers in our industry, are still implementing character lines. I think by this point in the game, especially if, let's say, you hit the reset button in 2021, you should be further along with the implementation of it. I have no doubt that most of the story, at least it should be written, because it kind of guides where you're going to go and what the artists are going to do with the environments and what gameplay set pieces are going to have to be made by programmers and so on and so forth. So at least I'm going to hope that's the case. But the implementation can sometimes be a slow part of an RPG's process, because if it's like a true BioWare RPG, there's going to be diverging paths and things that pop up if you do specific things at specific times. So there is that potential of why things are taking a while. But if there are placeholders all over the dang game, then that is problematic, and that does show that this game may be like mid 2024, because the thing that you can rest assured on is that you can still test quests while placeholders exist. So it's not like they necessarily are super behind, but I feel like you want to make sure everything that you're planning to sell is going to be in the game and then test that a number of times. So, you know, I don't want to, again, read super deep into it, but from my knowledge, I find that probably the most concerning aspect. As for combat, one source who recently played the game suggested that it was more akin to a hack and slash compared to the past games, and the game's combat wheel is similar to that of the one in Final Fantasy 15. As for your crew, it was said that you currently cannot control them and only select the ability that they can cast in combat. As for when Dragon Age Dreadwolf will release, it's anyone's guess, but missing voice lines and placeholder text likely suggest it's a bit further back than originally rumored. No actual dates from sources were given to Insider Gaming, but we wouldn't be surprised if the game releases in 2024. A lot more details were provided to Insider Gaming, but we were unable to get sufficient corroboration and will report as more sources come forward, so there's the potential that we do get more out of that. So we're going to talk a lot about the gameplay in this video too, because there was a leak, and the hack and slash aspect does sound accurate. It looks more God of War-esque, but some people were confused on the Final Fantasy 15 comparison, and I think I may be hitting the nail on the head here. Obviously, we'll see when the full game is officially revealed, but I was thinking how in Final Fantasy 15 you only controlled Noctis, but when you wanted to pull in like Gladiolus or Ignis into one of the various moves you could do, you just pressed a button prompt and they would do that right on the spot. But you never really controlled them until obviously they did Episode Ignis, Episode Gladiolus, and the separate DLC. But in the base game, that's how it functioned. And so it created this almost co-op mentality, even though it was a single player game. Another game that did this was Guardians of the Galaxy. You played as only Star-Lord, but you could call in, say, Drax, and he could do, or Rocket Raccoon, they could do their own moves and sort of support you while you were running around doing your own thing as Star-Lord. To me, not in love with this. I love the crunchy tactics of Dragon Age. I think we already saw what happened when we tried to go down the hack and slash route with Dragon Age 2. A game that I do find borderline criminally underrated, at least in the storytelling and world building department, but in the terms of gameplay, Dragon Age 2 kind of satisfied my curiosity of what hack and slash could be like inside this series, and it's not where I wanted to go. Quite frankly, if enemies weren't at times so spongy, I would really say Inquisition was the best of both worlds, right? You got the action elements to kind of run around, do abilities on the fly, but when it was time to prepare and bring up the overhead camera, you could do just that. Now, old school me is saying, we'll just go back to Dragon Age Origins, which pretty much evolved KOTOR's combat, but I understand that's not feasible for a big AAA game because, you know, you want to sell millions of copies. So I understand why they're going to take the action route. I just feel like Inquisition was that hybrid that you could evolve from and say like, hey, you can do tactics and pause the game, and maybe that is a thing, but right now it's reading like it's not, and what we saw certainly doesn't look that way at all. It does not look like Dragon Age Dreadwolf has that level of combat. I saw drop kicks and shield bashes. I'm like, oh man, this looks like God of War. Like, this is kind of crazy. But to me, Final Fantasy 15 is never an encouraging comparison in the realm of combat because it's one button and that's it. But I think the party members are so vital to Dragon Age combat. Like, that's one of its key pillars, its key components, its key strengths. So while I'm not trying to cast judgment upon the game so early, just hearing that alone, that it's even in consideration, to me, that's like a slam dunk. Like, yeah, you can control, say, Morrigan or whoever, or Liliana. It's like, yeah, of course, right? No, the fact that that was a conversation, they said, no, we're not going to do that. Again, I find that worrisome because that to me is a staple. Like, that's something you got to have, control of your party members, because that interactivity, that's where BioWare games thrive. It's not just out of combat with the conversations, it's in combat, being able to be these characters. Maybe they added in, maybe it's implemented in a different way that we don't know of yet. But just going off what we're reading here, and then what was eventually corroborated by a quick gameplay leak afterwards, I mean, it's just like, man, I can't sit here and be like, oh, I'm confident now. I'm feeling really good about this now. We'll see. Now then, there was the Reddit post that did end up leaking all of these gameplay and screenshots that you've likely seen on the internet, and Insider Gaming did a follow-up report on that, saying according to the original poster, the footage was posted in response to our original report. Insider Gaming can confirm that the images and footage are authentic and likely originated from a restricted play test that took place inside the last couple of weeks. It's believed that the footage would have been internally recorded and reviewed by BioWare developers, so the fate of the playtester is yet to be determined. But here is a general overview as said by this poster. Gameplay is in real time and similar to a hack and slash. I'm told that the guiding reference point was God of War 2018, and that shows. Players have their regular combo attack and then abilities, as well as a special bar, which generates, allowing you to pull off a special move. I really don't understand the comparison to Final Fantasy 15's wheel. It's standard Dragon Age ability wheel, so it sounds like something maybe more like Inquisition. There was no party control demonstrated. I think it's a safe bet to say you will not be able to directly control your party members in the game. That said, you will likely be able to tell them to execute certain abilities, but apparently that was locked off in the alpha. And the most immediate thing you notice is the animation quality has drastically improved. Like for any other AAA title, that's not a big deal, but we've never seen animation quality this good in any BioWare game. I didn't actually play it, but I can tell it probably feels really good to control your character. No more stiff animations, and it's all very fluid and seems very responsive. So at least that last bullet point is something you could maybe find encouraging, following up Andromeda. I feel like, yeah, some people had some worries about the animation, but you know what? I'm going to have a bit of a hot take here as someone who doesn't even like the game. I feel like Anthem kind of put some of those concerns to bed as well, because Anthem to me was like, hey, this game's not a great live service game, but the animations, the moves you did, like those weren't choppy BioWare jank, you know, at least in my opinion. So I wasn't too concerned about that in combat. I never thought combat animations have looked bad for quite a while. Like I'd even say Dragon Age 2's animations were serviceable. They had more like herky-jerky jank, especially when you use the two daggers or something like that. I get it, but I didn't think it was awful. So for me personally, this doesn't come as much of a surprise, but I hope they capture the animation better in the face department, something that we were kind of shocked to see Bethesda do. Jumping has also been retained, so rejoice if you enjoyed jumping a lot in DAI. As the character has a sword and shield, he was able to parry attacks from enemies and follow up with counters. It's hard to tell their exact abilities. They only had 2 on hotkeys along with a special, but one does appear to be basically a drop kick, which I talked about earlier, and the other is a charged sword attack. I'm not sure exactly what the special attack does. The UI is similar to Dragon Age Inquisition, but this is also alpha, and UI is the last thing finalized in any game. Character has a chest slot, a helmet slot, a primary weapon slot, and a shield, which is the secondary weapon maybe slot. For accessories, 1 amulet slot, 1 belt slot, and 2 ring slots. Oh, and the player character's hair looked glorious. I mean, it was clipping right through their helmet, but it was just flowing and bouncing as they moved. Finally, no more stiff hair. Now let's just hope they have more than 2 black hairstyles. And enemies were pretty much variations of Darkspawns except the dragon, but then again, they seem to have red lyrium powers, which would make sense given where the story is heading. So nothing here probably jumping off the page for me except the UI. Now, yes, UI isn't finalized until the end of the game, but UI is implemented pretty early, and you need to have a pretty specific layout. I think a lot of people misunderstand the, I put in quotes, ease of input that is, because it's not. You have to do a lot of back-end work to get your UI up and running. So it is much more than I think this person's giving it credit for, and typically what you see isn't going to dramatically change this deep into development. So you set up a framework and then you kind of do an art pass and pretty it up later on. Again, I can't show it, but this UI had the Destiny effect, boxes, floating cursor, and I get it, man. Like, I get that it's clean, but what happened to stylized menus? No one, like, gamers aren't stupid. We can handle things that aren't just simple boxes. Like, we are able to process at a higher level. We are elite gamers. We can handle cool looking menus that are easy to use. Like, I look at Persona. It's like, did they have to put things in small boxes with a floating cursor? Because they went, Joker's dancing around the page a little too much here, guys. I think people might get confused. Like, no, Persona's a multi-million selling franchise. Like, it did fine. So I don't know. Maybe they have some market data I don't have. But to me, when I saw it, I went, really? Even this game? Like, that's where you see the live service elements. Whenever I see a box with a floating cursor, I just know at some point in time they were thinking about it and going, yeah, we might make this a live service game. But I also know that it just seems like it's easy to implement, because one thing with game development people should know is that it's very hard to just make your own thing and say, I want this thing like this. Instead, what they do is make it like this, and they point at a screen, and you see the most common UI in the industry now, and that's why it's just one-to-one. It's what everyone's familiar with. Why be original, I guess? But that is what's going on with the Dragon Age Dreadwolf leaks. My overall thoughts are, yeah, I've kind of lost my swagger a bit here. I'm not feeling mighty confident like I quite was originally, and now I'd say I feel a little more off balance would be the right word. It's not like I'm feeling like, oh, the sky's falling, but I'm also not going and beating my chest and saying, yeah, this is going to be excellent. So we'll see, where it all ends up. Of course, I'll remain patient for that final reveal, but what I'm reading and what I'm seeing, not in love with, right? Not in love with. I always had a feeling they would take a more action-y route, so I just got to let go of that part and accept it for what it is. But not controlling your party members, big sticking point for me, man. Big sticking point. Because I think, again, Inquisition was respectful of people who said, I like Origins combat, but also people who went, I like where 2's was heading. So to go all in on a God of War style combat system seems to be the thing. Remember, I reported for KOTOR Remake that the combat was inspired by Neo 2 and God of War 2018. So this combat system seems to have had a profound impact on many a developer. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I've got for you today on Dragon Age Dreadwolf. I'm looking forward to seeing your thoughts on this in the comments down below. Are you down bad about this? Are you excited about this? Please do fire away. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the heck out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.